Welcome to the Bike Life podcast by Warmshowers Foundation, where we will be sharing knowledge, experience, tools, and stories of touring cyclists and hosts from around the world. I'm Tara Lee, the woman behind the scenes at Warmshowers Foundation, the leading platform for cyclists looking for hosts and to connect with a passionate international community. Find out more by visiting us at Warmshowers.org. Now, on to the show.
Hey everyone, this is Jerry Kopak, the host of Bike Life, coming to you from the mountains of Breckenridge, Colorado. If you've been dreaming about riding the classic East Coast Greenway route in North America, well, settle in because today's guest has got some stories for you. A couple of years ago, Lisa Watts set off with a friend to tackle this 3,000-mile iconic route from Florida to Maine. She followed up that epic adventure with a travel memoir titled Crossing Bridges, What Biking Up the East Coast Taught Me About Life After 60. Hey, Lisa, welcome to Bike Life.
Good morning, Jerry. Thank you. Fun to be here.
Now, I'm sure there are a ton of people out there listening who have had this route on their bucket list. So tell us a bit about the East Coast Greenway and why it's so special.
Sure. Well, and I should note that for 4 years, I was an employee of the East Coast Greenway Alliance. So I speak with them. A little bit of company knowledge as well. But the idea of biking all along the East Coast was something I dreamed about for decades. And then we were living in North Carolina, and I tripped over the fact that there's a nonprofit based in Durham, North Carolina, trying to build this route.
And who is that?
The East Coast Greenway Alliance.
There you go.
Greenway.org.
Okay.
But it started 30 years now, I think. It's been a group of planners, Boston and New York and Washington, D.C., thinking that they would try to connect bike paths on the northern half of the East Coast, which is much more developed, progressive along the lines of alternative travel. And it soon grew into the whole East Coast. But core to that was the idea that it could be locally, it could be something commuters use to get around those cities. And then the dream of people who wanted to take longer trips would connect it all. And one of the things I loved working there and when I took the trip was it intentionally takes you through the big cities, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Miami, Raleigh, North Carolina, New York City. And you think on a bike, oh my God, you've got to skirt them, you got to go around. But those were my favorite days, going into and out of big cities, because typically there was pretty good infrastructure. And, you're on this beautiful bike path, you're not on 95, which most people know to travel the East Coast. So, just a great concept. And at this point, I know the nonprofit is giving the warning left and right. It's become more discovered. More people are wanting to try it. It's important to know that it's about 35% complete. So while 35% of it is on beautiful, protected bike paths, 65% or so is still going to be on roads. And some of them are hairier than others. The South, unfortunately, South Carolina, most especially in Georgia, are not always pleasant. So it's a good reminder that, it's not all bike path quite yet. That's the goal.
Yeah. So I guess people maybe in these areas in the South aren't used to seeing cyclists on the road and that maybe just don't know how to interface with them maybe.
Well, in all fairness, so when I did the trip, I was with my friend Dee, who's 9 years older than me, a fearless soul. She's ridden her bike all around the world. I get a little braver when I'm with her, and we rode, single file with her in front, of course, along Highway 17 in South Carolina. And you have no shoulder, you have a rumble strip, to keep a drowsy driver from drifting into the grass, and trucks flying by. And I'm telling myself, they don't want to hit me. They don't want to hit me. We didn't experience any aggression from drivers, but there just literally is no shoulder. So, and a sense, the route depends on each municipality dedicating money towards building, a bike path, maintaining it. There's a sense in the South of police, education, all these things are more important maybe than alternative transportation routes. They're working on it.
And so when you say they're working on it, do you know, is there any kind of timeline for this to be completed?
I would say, people keep dreaming. I think, again, I've been away from the actual inner workings of the Greenway for a few years now, but I think federal funding, and that's where the largest chunk of the funding comes from for transportation projects like the Greenway, has been better in recent years. And so that has sped up a little bit of the timeline. It takes a long time. We used to share when I worked there that on average, a mile of Greenway cost $1 million between land acquisition, planning, design, building. It's a big project.
Wow.
However,
and so, okay.
One big highway bridge is probably the same cost as finishing the rest of the Greenway, so it's important to keep in mind the scale of federal transportation dollars and, what we're talking about.
And so talking about federal dollars, so this is a federally funded project. Are they not relying on funding from each individual state, but they're obviously collaborating with the states for the infrastructure?
It's the whole package, and that's what makes it so tricky, and why the Alliance is there as a champion and cheerleader and guide, is that each portion of the Greenway belongs to the municipality it passes through. So that town, city, may advocate and fund for it, the state and federal. But the biggest chunk of funding typically comes from federal transportation dollars, typically.
Got it. And where is sort of the largest percentage of protected bikeways? Is it further north?
Definitely the northern half versus the southern half. And I used to know this stuff off the top of my head. Rhode Island, the little tiny state where I live, has had a huge percentage complete, of its miles, because they were doing it early on, 25, 30 years ago, they were building bike paths. In general, New England and the northern states are doing better.
So what do these bike paths look like? Do they parallel the main roads, or do they just kind of divert way off into the woods or in the countryside?
Yeah, it's the whole gamut, which is really one of the fun things about the trip, is that you kind of picture it running along the water the whole way. And of course you're not, but beautiful waterfront stretches. As I said, riding through cities was great. And that's typically a protected bike path, off the road. Some of it is alongside the road. At this point, you're definitely going to be riding with some sharrows and that kind of thing, but it's a whole mix. And when you are going through so many urban areas and then some rural, that's the fun of it. It's just a huge mix.
So I find it funny to say, or interesting that you feel that riding through the big cities was one of your favorite parts, because so many cyclists, myself included, dread those, like trying to get in and out of the city with the congestion and the traffic. I just want to be free out into the wilderness or the woods or the mountain passes. Yeah. Tell me why you love coming into the cities.
Yeah, well, again, it's that notion you have, and you live out west, and so your notion may be, I need to be in the mountains, and I wrote about this in the book. I'm a child of the suburbs. I'm a child of the East Coast. I grew up in Atlanta and then Baltimore and Boston. This is my familiar territory, and I love, being along the water. But and we know 95 is how you travel, from north to south. But no, like Philadelphia, beautiful bike path that takes you right into the city, and you're along the river, and you're surrounded by tall buildings, and you're on this beautiful protected path. You don't know about that when you're driving on 95. They're like secrets. The same in Boston, beautiful Charles River bike path, along the Charles River. New York City, running along the Hudson River Greenway. That's my favorite way to go to New York, is just stay on the bike path, stay away from the downtown streets. So, and to me, I loved that we were never terribly far from civilization, so you can get the things you need, like food, coffee, a bathroom.
Of course, the essentials.
Yeah, right.
So did you have a favorite state, a favorite part of the Greenway, or just a favorite aspect of this route?
It's funny, Jerry. People asked us that all along the way. And I could kind of tell they wanted us to say their town where we were.
I'm sorry for being so unoriginal. I know you've had this
No.
question so many
No,
times.
well, and it's hard. But, and my friend Dee would say, oh my gosh, all the people we've met. She was afraid that the two of us traveling as old friends, we wouldn't be talking to other people, but we met people all along the way. And there was something about the two of us that I have found since, and I talk about in the book a little bit, the fact that, I was approaching 60, she was approaching 70. We didn't wear bike clothes. We just wore we were both runners as well. We had, running shorts and singlets on. We didn't look very threatening. And so people found us very approachable and they were curious. So Dee would say all the people we met was her favorite part. I still say the thrill of biking into a big city and knowing I got there under my own power. When we were biking through Miami on a Sunday morning, I got here from Key West,
Yeah.
to the big city. Yeah.
So
the problem is, Jerry, I've now read your book. And the scale of the two adventures is sort of night and day.
No.
It is. But I think that's what I keep remembering about my story is I'm a very ordinary person who happens to like to ride a bike and just push myself to take more than a week-long bike trip. I took 2 months. And that for me was a powerful adventure that changed me. It changed my life. I didn't have to go to Africa or India. And you took 2 years and some, right?
Yeah. So that brings me to my question. Another question. Was there something that inspired this trip? Was there something that happened in life that says, you know what? I'm going to do something big. And speaking of that, how long was this trip for you?
Yeah, it was almost exactly 2 months. It was 57 or 58 days. So,
Those are fast.
And we gave ourselves, it was. We gave ourselves pretty much 1 day off a week, if we were staying at a friend's house or something like that. So, it started because I have grown up along the East Coast, and at some point in my early 20s, living in Boston and doing a lot of biking just for fun, I thought that would be really cool to connect all the dots of my life. And then, as I say, I learned about the East Coast Greenway, that people were building a bike route that was exactly what I wanted to do. But I had been able to do week-long bike trips here and there from my 40s in Ohio on, and that just sort of whet my appetite because, there's something about being on your bike for a week or more. You've got all the things you need on your bike. You're carrying it with you. I wanted to feel what that felt like for longer, and I could pretend that that's how I lived. And I started, making a spreadsheet, which I know doesn't sound very spontaneous or adventurous.
You got a plan.
Yeah, pretty much booking 3/4 of our stays, on the trip. And I had that window of 2 months because I had a job. I had to get back to my job at the East Coast Greenway. So it was something that I knew I wanted to do. And also, Dee had just retired, so she had time. And I kind of had that feeling, if I don't do it now, am I going to do this in 10 years? Which the answer now is yes, I would, but I didn't know it at the time. So,
wow. So did you go north to south or south to north?
We went south to north.
Okay.
And Dee, again, she's a world traveler, wise woman, and she said, prevailing winds are westerly, so they were going to blow us up.
Oh, tailwinds are nice.
2 or 3 days, we hit a huge headwind coming out of the Keys. I thought, what was she talking about? And I don't know, a few times along the trip, we heard the joke about if we'd gone the other way, it would have all been downhill. Yeah.
You think that's true?
North to south. No.
So because you work for the Greenway, I would expect that they would be encouraging you to, take some time off, go explore this amazing thing that we do and tell us about it.
Yeah, I asked my boss to go for a walk, and he thought I was announcing that I was quitting. And I just said, no, do you think I could take a 2-month leave? I've wanted to do this. And he said, no, yeah, that's great. Just please be safe, because if his communications manager, if something terrible happened on the trip, it wouldn't do well.
So that was your role.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's important for the Greenway for sure.
Right.
That'd be bad
Right.
press, right?
Yeah. So I think I turned in 3 or 4 blog posts along the way, and really everything did go well. It was like we were moving in a bubble of good weather. We had storms behind us and ahead of us, and rarely even had bad weather. So it all went ridiculously well.
Ridiculously well. I love that description.
Yeah. Well, for a story, it would have been more of a story if we'd encountered some huge,
Yeah, hurricane
challenges.
or
But
something that you had to ride through.
yeah.
Like, geez. So
Yeah.
I love what you said about the difference between, say, like an overnighter or a weekender or a long distance, long time cycling adventure, because you talk about how it just becomes life. It's not essentially like, that's like a little weekend getaway. It's a vacation. Like your whole day becomes just riding, and you can kind of settle into maybe a different mindset. So maybe talk to me more about that, what that experience was like for you.
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. It's how you live. And, I worried a little bit beforehand, would I get bored, or, I would just get tired of it. And I loved it. And part of that is I love novelty and change. And we got up every day and we didn't know exactly what we were going to see. There is a certain predictable routine to, we averaged 60 miles a day. We knew we'd, stop mid-morning and have our second breakfast. We drank a lot of coffee. But, every day the landscape was a little bit different. Occasionally we had people meeting us who would guide us, and then we didn't have to navigate. That was a treat. I loved it. My body felt healthy. Life is really simple. I loved that everything I needed was in my 2 panniers, and, not complicated.
I love that. It's just a way to really simplify things. And you probably learned this too. You come back with this mentality of, okay, what do I really need? If I can live for 2 months on a bicycle, and you come back home like, oh, wow, I could really simplify some things.
Absolutely. I've also always liked houses.
Okay.
But I came back to our little bungalow in Durham, North Carolina, and it was a 3-bedroom, 3-bath. There was a little bedroom and bath downstairs. And I remember thinking, what's all this space for? And why do I have a whole closet of clothes? This is ridiculous. And I cooked up a plan that happened within 6 months of getting back, where we moved to a little townhouse. And I have a friend, Charlie, who goes all the way back to high school. We used to bike together. And he said, that's the pannier effect. Like you just downsize because you realize you don't need all that stuff. Yeah.
You need to trademark that. I love it. The pannier effect.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a similar experience as well, but I love that.
Well, it came from Charlie Finnegan. I suspect he didn't create it, but yeah, it's real. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I'm gonna hold on to that one. But if I ever do use it in a public setting, I am definitely going to cite you, right? Okay. For sure. I'm not going to claim it as my own.
Perfect.
So you're no stranger to cycling. You've been riding your bike for a while. You've probably been doing tours for a while. What's changed in the touring mentality, the touring industry, or maybe just about you? What's changed with you in the last, 10, 20, 30 years since you've been doing this kind of traveling?
Yeah, I think the first startling change was going to find a bike for the trip. And so before then, it had always been a road bike. I had a beat up old Raleigh, and I cared about my pace, and worried why I couldn't keep up with my friends. I felt like I probably needed a better bike. And I went to a bike shop in Raleigh, North Carolina, and said, I guess I need a touring bike. And all of a sudden, you get wider tires and a heavier bike, and it's all about endurance. And that really suits me. I'm a runner. I love long distance running. I've never been a sprinter or 5K runner. And I got on the low end of a Kona Rove touring bike. and it wasn't steel, it was aluminum, and I felt like I was riding on air, wider tires. And it's probably the bike that has fit me best. And I put a leather Brooks seat on, and I'm never going back to a road bike. So the idea of a bike that can handle any kind of terrain that you're riding on, that was eye-opening to me. And I gave up caring how fast I go. I want to be comfortable. I love to go for a long time, but I don't care about my speed anymore. So
So this was a flat bar bike, a little bit wider
no,
tires. No, still drop bars?
handlebars.
Okay.
Yeah. I have since moved on to a hybrid because
Okay.
it's a little bit lighter. That bike was really heavy. And I took a bike tour in Europe last fall where we boxed our bikes and flew them over. And my friend said, I don't think your bike's going to meet the weight limit.
50 pounds.
Yeah.
23 kg.
Exactly. So now I have flat bars.
Okay.
And again, I'm never going back to drop handlebars. I don't need to drop. I'm not going to be sprinting. So yeah, that's changed my world too. So, in general, it's kind of like the music industry. I feel like there used to be all these categories, and then the categories got huge. What's the difference between a gravel bike and a hybrid? And it doesn't really matter. I just feel like now the most important thing I tell friends is just get it to fit you. The geometry is really important. So
yeah. And I've got to ask this, since you talk about different kind of terrain, that bike goes anywhere. The East Coast Greenway, all paved, or is it some dirt roads, some dirt paths?
Yeah, some dirt paths.
Okay.
And the thing is, because it's in development, some of that changes, monthly. And there is an online map at greenway.org that kind of identifies, where it's dirt or gravel. But yeah, I would say 10% dirt paths when we rode it.
Not terrible.
No.
Okay. And so if someone was going to head off on, say, a skinny tire road bike,
they would probably be fine.
It wouldn't be deadly.
No.
Okay.
No. But I was way more comfortable. I loved it. And, you don't even think about gravel or, crossing over bumps and things because, the wider tires was a revelation to me.
It's a lot more surface area contact, so it gives you better control, absorbs more bumps, and it's more comfortable, right?
It's more comfortable. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, it's funny how the industry is changing because people used to ride road bikes with 20 millimeter tires, and now they're riding with 30 and 40 millimeter tires. And yeah, it's amazing just how much more comfortable and how much more control and confidence that gives you. So
yeah. Yeah, I did get on my road bike once after the trip, and I was actually a friend's wife was interested in buying it, and it was so fast. It was scary. I thought I need a seatbelt. This is out of control.
and then now everything has disc brakes, which is so much better, especially in rain. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking of rain, this is a question I like to ask from time to time of my guests, and so here you go. Was there anything along this trip that made you think like, oh man, how am I going to get out of this one? Because, trips of this length, I mean, things are bound to go wrong, even as much as you planned.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, before we left, my friend Debbie at the office at the East Coast Greenway said, don't be one of those EDIers. People every damn inch. You haven't done the Greenway if you haven't biked every damn inch. If you need help, ask for help. And we were biking into Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it was raining, and then it just turned to monsoon. And that's one of the areas of the coast that has a lot of issues with flooding. It's kind of parts of Florida, too. They call it sunny day flooding. It's climate change, But as we're entering Myrtle Beach, which had that, I don't know if it's a city or town, small city, it has the first complete section of East Coast Greenway running from end to end. So I really wanted to make sure I caught that. And it was bike week in Myrtle Beach, the wrong kind of bike, motorcycle week. And I mean, Jerry, the puddles were like up to our calves, and we were getting colder. And Dee has Raynaud's disease. A lot of my runner friends have that, where her toes and fingers get useless when she gets cold, and her lips were turning blue, and it's painful. I understand. So we stopped under an awning and said, it's time. It's time to ask somebody with a truck if they can take us on to North Myrtle Beach, where we were stopping for the night. And we got, the motorcyclists, who all had pickup trucks in the parking lot of Harley Davidson, just looking at us like, what? And y'all need motors on those things. And, And so we rode on. The puddles were ridiculous. It was cold. And we stopped at a real estate office where they let us come in and use the bathroom and make some coffee with their Keurig machine. And this fellow who was real estate shopping came out and said, I know you probably want to do the rest of the route yourself, but I have a truck here that could carry both bikes. And I looked at Dee and, we were unanimous, yes, please. So he took us the last 10 miles, and we loved it. We didn't feel bad at all.
Good.
Yeah. And I think 10 or 15 years before that, we might not have taken the ride. So I think that's part of the wisdom that comes with age. If Dee's not able to use her fingers, it's probably not a good idea for her to be on the bike. But really, that was like our worst weather. We had one more day like that 2 days before we finished in Maine. And then it was really cold. It was mid-June in Maine. And we tried the truck question a couple places, and no one was available. And we rode, and it felt like the wind was going to push me off the side of the road. But, we made it.
So there were nobody in Maine who would give you a little lift?
We stopped at this one little diner coffee shop, and there were two young guys sitting there, and we kind of asked them, and this guy launched it. He said, let me call my boss, see if I can borrow a truck. And, we didn't want to push it too much. And finally he said, I'm dealing with the lawyer who's trying to take my kid away. We thought, his life is a little more complicated than ours. We'll just pull our wet rain jackets on and just ride. And then we got to the Blueberry Patch Motel, which had little in-room heaters where we could hang our stuff up. And the guy checking us in said, oh, boy, I would have picked you up on the road if I'd seen you gals out there. But we didn't see him.
So I love how you talk about the EDI, every damn inch. And I love that you didn't fully subscribe to that. So you're from the Northeast United States. You're familiar with the ice cream company, Ben & Jerry's, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ben Cohen, the founder, has this saying, and I'm a big fan of what I call inspirational quotes. So one of his quotes is, if it's not fun, why do it?
Oh,
and I
nice.
try to live by that as well. So it sounds like in an indirect way, you said, you know what, this is not that fun. Let's just skip the section. Let's skip the rain. Let's go and get warm. And so bravo to you.
Yeah. There was one other tiny stretch like that. These are my only, two exceptions. I knew that approaching New York City, there is a stretch that I had seen other people doing the whole East Coast Greenway talked about, like one bridge where I've seen photos, it's all overgrown with grass and you're along the highway, you're coming close to the city. And I told my coworker, Niles, like, that part kind of scares me. And he said, take the train. You're not missing, nice Greenway. So we did. We took the commuter train from Brunswick, New Jersey into I think it was Grand Central Station. We had wanted to take the ferry across, but we missed that part. But that's okay. And again, it's like, oh my gosh, the commuter train was awesome. We just rolled our bikes on, and Dee grabbed iced coffee from the Dunkin' Donuts, and it was great.
It's about the adventure as a whole, not about every damn inch, as you so perfectly articulated.
Yeah. Welcome to the non-EDI club.
Exactly. So if you don't mind, I want to pivot and talk about your book. So sure. Crossing Bridges, I'm thinking there's maybe a metaphor in that title.
Yeah. The older I get, the more uncomfortable I am with edges and heights. And I used to love bridges. Bridges take you to all these wonderful places like islands, but I started getting really uncomfortable biking over bridges. And guess what the East Coast has?
Bridges.
Hundreds of bridges. Our first day coming out of the Keys, we had to ride 7 Mile Bridge, which is a 7 mile bridge that arches in the middle. It's not flat. And I was petrified. It took us an hour in headwinds. And it was actually an editor I have to give credit to. The first draft of the book, she said, you talk about bridges a lot. And, there's kind of a metaphor there. And it's true. It just was, I won't say that by the time I finished, I got rid of my fear of biking over bridges, but I definitely had gotten accustomed to it. And it's a lot about entering this sort of third act of life, where a lot of my, aspiring about my career and other facts of my life has just settled into, it's a great place to be. And you just get yourself across, you just, I came up with a method for making myself comfortable as I rode across.
What was that?
You don't look too far forward. You look just at your front tire. You don't, acknowledge that your body's saying, oh my God, what would happen if we fell over the edge? You acknowledge it, but you don't focus on it and you just keep moving forward. It's kind of a metaphor for living.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you're aware there's been a lot of information recently, not just about aging, but aging well. And of course, people talk about diet and rest, but the big component I keep coming back to is community. And so what have you learned so far about aging well?
Yeah, community is important, friends, but also attitude. And it's a kind of funny bookend that I'm just leaving a job. I've actually just retired as of a week or so ago with the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston. And so these are people who study aging policy, not the health of aging. But there was a lot of focus on ageism and how we talk about aging, how we think about it. And I had to admit that, one of my first thoughts about what happens when we age is we decline, right? It's a decline. And so, sharing a lot of research about these attitudes and where they come from, I think I've embodied some of it. Is, to me, this is actually a great time of life. I feel like, I was a mom, I had a career, and a lot of that responsibility as it, slips away means I have way more time to play. I have resources. I have the experience of all my years. And I'm still healthy. And this is a gift. I never even considered that the 60s might be, playtime.
Yeah.
And I think we tend to not look at aging that way. We just say, of course, it's inevitable that we keep declining and everything gets harder and gets worse. And it's not necessarily true.
Okay. So one thing that I've been paying attention to in my life as I age, and I'm not 60, but I turned 50 this year. So I'm paying attention to these things as well.
Old.
I feel great, but thank you. So one thing that I've been paying attention to is that I know in our country, people talk about put your head down, work hard, do all these things until you turn 65 and then start living your best life. And, we probably have all had experiences, known people who didn't live to 65. And so do you have any thoughts about how to live, not just when you're 60 and beyond, but throughout your life to have a really good and fulfilled life?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. There's no given, there's no guarantee. And so I think I always believed in a balance. My work was very sedentary, sitting at a desk, writing things. And I loved running, biking, kayaking, yoga as a balance. And I think, that's probably where health is, satisfying work, but also being able to play and be active. But I think, the idea of putting your life on hold until you're 65 and who knows when, I never subscribed to that. So I took opportunities when I can, but it was a little more measured. Again, like a week's bike tour instead of 2 months. And what I'm saying is I feel like the older I got and, for whatever reason, I felt like I could afford to take a 2-month leave from my job. Like these opportunities, you did it in your 40s, which is awesome. And I think just recognizing opportunities when they're available and not saving it for your, late 60s, 70s is smart.
Wow, I love this, and I am so happy that I got a chance to talk to you. And I have your book on order. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your story. I'm sure it's inspired a ton of people to check out this iconic route and, of course, your book. So on that note, are there ways for our listeners to connect with you, learn more about your venture, or, of course, where to get your book?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Yes. And this has been really fun. I would talk about bike travel anytime. CrossingBridgesMemoir.com. You can read a little bit more about me and order the book, which is you order it anywhere you'd find a book. And Greenway.org. You can learn more about the East Coast Greenway. But yeah,
Yes.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening to my conversation with Lisa Waters. If you enjoy our show, give us a like, a share on your social channels, or maybe just tell your friends. These stories hopefully will inspire you to set off on your own bicycle adventure and maybe make the world feel a little bit smaller, one pedal stroke at a time. My name is Jerry Kopak, and until next time, keep riding.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the show as much as we enjoyed making it. Wherever you are listening, please leave us a rating and a review as it helps us reach more cyclists and hosts around the world. Visit us at Warmshowers.org to become a part of our community or on Instagram at Warmshowers_org. If you would like to be a guest on the show or submit a question, please make sure to email us at podcast@warmshowers.org.